everyone. Here we are again. A few pounds heavier probably, and a little more tired than we were before. You guys will make it. You're good. I told them this morning I was going to try to speak in the most monotone voice that I possibly could, just to see if you guys could stay awake. But I better not do that this afternoon. You guys are already looking a little sleepy. All right, we are back in the book of Psalms. It is good to be back here in the services today. We were glad to be able to go on vacation, and the Lord provided safety in travels. Thankful for that. But it is good to be here. There's nothing like being back together here. We also talk about, there is a huge difference between listening to a service online and being in a worship service. They are not the same. I think sometimes people, with COVID and everything else that was going on, people in this world got used to, quote unquote, going to church from their living room. And I've always told people, even during COVID, listening to a service online is not going to church. Going to church is a gathering together of the assembly, and that is how we're supposed to come together. I get it. There's times and situations where we can't do that. And I am thankful that the Lord has given us technology that allows us, people that are maybe not able to get out, can still hear. I'm glad that during times of all kinds of situations in this world that we have the ability to still be able to hear messages preached. But it is not the same as actually assembling together with brothers and sisters in Christ. And so I am very glad to be here. It's good. And we're thankful the Lord has allowed us to be able to come back. We are going to be in Psalms chapter 61 today. It is a very short psalm. Not the shortest, but a pretty short one. It's always ironic to me that the two, you got Psalms 119, you got Psalms 118. You got a pretty big contrast in a couple different chapters in Psalms. You got a really long one, you got a really, really, really short one. Well, this is a kind of a little bit longer than some, but a lot shorter than others. We got a whopping 8 verses, and even those aren't that long or complicated. So it won't take very long to read, but I love this psalm. This is a psalm of encouragement. This is a psalm that really lifts you up when you listen to the words of it. And there's several different phrases in here that, they just have such a powerful, they bring such a powerful message to them that they are actually often used in different songs, and multiple songs stem from Psalms chapter 61. So let's just go ahead and read this together. We know that this is a psalm of David, and in verse 1 it says, "Hear my cry, O God, and attend unto my prayer." Now if you stopped there, you might think that this is a psalm that's kind of down, right? Lots of times when David says, "Hear my cry, O God, and attend unto my prayer," he's about to give you this really rough story, and he's about to outline how bad things are, and it's just bad. Well, I actually believe that Psalm 61 probably does come from a place of things were bad and the Lord was his refuge. But almost all of this psalm is just uplifting. Other than that opening statement about hearing my cry and attending unto my prayer, really, it is 100% just this uplifting psalm, which is a good thing to remember, right? Because the rest of this passage, he's going to talk about what the Lord is for him, what the Lord has done for him, what the Lord's protected him from, what the Lord's going to protect him from. And yet, even though it's this really positive, super uplifting hymn, it starts with, "Hear my prayer, O God." Right? "Hear my prayer, O God. Attend unto my prayer. Hear my cry, O God, and attend unto my prayer." That is a good thing for us to say, even when we're coming from a place of being uplifted, even when we're coming from a place of remembering how amazing God has been for us and encouraged knowing He's going to be amazing for us into the future. That humble cry, "Lord, hear my cry, hear my prayer, Lord, answer my prayer." It's a very humble way to start this psalm, because you see somebody who's coming to the Lord with a plea. That's a humble attitude, right? That's a very humble attitude. And it's a good way to start this, even though he actually seems to be very encouraged as you get to the rest of the psalm. Verse 2, "From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings, Selah. For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Thou wilt prolong the king's life, and his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So will I sing praises unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." I told you that there's multiple songs that come from this, and there's one of them that we actually sing. There's another one that you may have heard, but I don't know that we sing it. But in one of our hymn books, I don't know that you guys have a copy. This is the older one that we have. There's a song that's called "The Rock That Is Higher Than I." And it says, "Oh, sometimes the shadows how deep, and rough seems the path to the goal, and sorrows sometimes how they sweep like tempest down over the soul." And that song is painting a picture of, man, sometimes we are in a deep, dark place, and things are rough, and we know where we need to be. We see the goalpost up ahead, but we also see everything between us and the goalpost. Now, I'm not a football guy, okay? But I'll give you a football analogy here for a minute, right? The goalpost is big, and it's yellow, and it's way down there. And you're the guy with the ball, and you can see the goalpost. But do you know what's between me and the goalpost? Well, a whole bunch of muscle-bound, sweaty, dirty guys. And their goal is to just pummel me. That's rough when you're the guy looking down at that goalpost, right? That's obviously a sport analogy, a goofy analogy. But in life, sometimes we know that down there is where we need to be. Down there is where the Lord wants us. But we can see obstacles and challenges and enemies and attacks and all kinds of things that are coming our way. And sorrows, sometimes how they sweep like tempests down over the soul. That's a very picturesque way of describing that in the song. You ever been out there? This actually happened to us while we were in Mexico. We were kind of up on a mountain, and listen, in Mexico where we were, the mountains are kind of bare, right? So you're a little exposed. And now where we were, they don't get much rain. But listen, a sudden thunderstorm came in over the mountains, and it just started sprinkling a little bit, and then it started pouring. And listen, the lightning struck like right outside the building we were standing in, right? I think about the times when it's rained and you can look outside and literally the rain is like sweeping. Have you ever noticed that? It's just like the wind blows, and as it comes down, it's just blowing almost sideways versus coming down as a gentle rain. And listen, there are times when, whether it's the loss of a loved one or something we're going through, the sorrow that we feel is like that sweeping rain, and it just covers everything that it comes in contact with. So the writer of this hymn is describing some of that. But then, in the chorus, he says, "Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I. Oh, then to the rock let me fly, to the rock that is higher than I." Right? A place of safety is the picture that you get, a place of refuge, a place away from the troubles, right? I mean, the very way that this is laid out would say, this is a place that takes you out of the deep, dark shadows. This is a place that removes the obstacles between you and the goal. This is a place that helps ease that sorrow. The second verse says, "Oh, sometimes how long seems the day, and sometimes how weary my feet, but toiling in life's dusty way, the rock's blessed shadow, how sweet." You know, again, when we were in Mexico, it was hot. And I heard it was hot back here. It got like 105, 106 with heat indexes even higher. Now in Mexico, very little cloud cover. Sun was out the whole time. It was super hot. But you know what? You'd get in the shade. It's amazing how much of a difference some shade makes. When you're out in the sun and it's beating down on you and it's hot and your skin is getting hot and there's just, it feels like there's just no breeze. And then you find a nice place of shade. It's amazing how much a little bit of shade can make a difference, right? And this guy here is describing like you're toiling. Toil is not like, you know, there's work and then there's work. I mean, those of us that have done it know it, right? There's work and there's work, right? There's washing the dishes and there's digging a ditch in the sun, right? Neither one of them are fun, if I'm honest. But listen, I'd a lot rather do the dishes than have a shovel out in the sun digging a ditch. Toiling in life's dusty way. The picture there is we're going through life and all the struggles and the trials and the filth that comes along with it. And yet to be able to pull up into the shade of that rock. Right? Again, it's a picture of relief. It's a picture of some comfort. It's a picture of some just this idea of being able to get away from what it is that's bothering you. In the third verse, he says, "Oh, near to the rock let me keep. If blessings or sorrows prevail, or climbing the mountain way steep, or walking the shadowy vale." Have you thought about the words to that song there? Because how does he start off with, "Oh, near to the rock let me keep"? In other words, let me stay close to the rock. Okay, I'm going to stay close to the rock. When things are really good, I'm going to be there. No. He's talking about when I've been toiling in life's dusty way and it's dirty and I finally find the shadow of the rock, that's when I want to be by the rock, when it's hot and dirty and nasty and sweaty. No, he's actually saying, let me draw close to the rock, whatever's going on. Because listen, if blessings or sorrows prevail, if it's good or if it's bad, if I'm climbing the mountain way steep, or I'm walking the shadowy vale. The shadowy vale means the shadowy valley. It doesn't matter if I'm on a mountaintop or in the valley. It doesn't matter if I'm in sorrow or in blessing. What I need is to draw close to the rock. Right? Good times, bad times. Draw close to the rock. So there's that song. There's another one. I won't really get into that one too much. We don't really do it a whole lot. I think it was maybe the Gaithers wrote it, but it talks about the rock that is higher than I. So again, this phrase, the rock that is higher than I, has drawn several different songs from it. And I think this chapter just tends to be one of those chapters that, man, it's just like balm. Balm is like a soothing salve. Some of us, I won't say who, some of us might have got a little bit too much sun. And you know what happens when you get too much sun? You burn. You guys ever had a sunburn? You guys ever had a really, really bad sunburn? Like where it hurts just to have something touch it. Yeah. You know, they sell like aloe vera or cooling cream. And you can take that and rub it on that spot, right? And it provides relief, provides comfort. For a lot of people that are going through bad times, sorrowful times, grieving times, painful times, loss of loved ones, it's chapters like this that are like that cooling salve that you put on those wounds, right? That sunburn, it just hurts to touch. It hurts for anything to brush up against it. You know, but then you put that on it, and it just brings that coolness, and it brings comfort and relief. That's a lot of what this psalm does for people that are struggling. And so as we read it, the second verse says this, "From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee." That phrase, "from the end," there's two Hebrew words that make up that phrase, "from the end." And if you put those two together, one of them means to be out of. Okay? Out of. And the other one is the extremity. If you want to look up the word extremity, it's like the furthest reaches. Right? So he's like saying, from the ends of the earth and beyond. He's saying, no matter where I'm at, no matter how far from home I am, no matter where I've been driven to, I am going to cry unto God. This is written by a guy who had went through a whole lot. And he had learned time after time that God fulfills His promises. He had learned time after time that God is the deliverer. God is the one that provides strength. God is the one that provides the things that he needed. And in his faith and trust in God, he could say, whether at home or as far from home as I can possibly get, I will cry to you. That's the attitude we need to have. That song talked about whether sorrows prevail or blessings prevail. I want to go to the rock that's higher than I. It's the same kind of thought here. It doesn't matter whether I'm safe and sound at home or I'm to the ends of the earth. I will cry to you. It's interesting, though, when he says it. The last half of that phrase says, when my heart is overwhelmed. When my heart is overwhelmed. Are you ever overwhelmed? Overwhelmed brings with it this feeling of, I don't even know what to do. You ever been there? Like, it's so, I don't know. Do I go left? Do I go right? Do I sit down? Do I stay? Do I go? I don't even know anymore. I don't even know. I think, except for maybe some of the little ones, but even them, I think we've all probably been there, and the longer you've lived, probably the more times you've been there, and maybe you've been there even a little bit deeper. I don't know how else to say it. But you come to those places where you just don't know what to do. And it's overwhelming. Sometimes, and it can be little stuff, right? Sometimes at work, decisions need to be made, but you only have part of the story. And you can see the implications if you go this way or you go this way. And there's good and bad for both. And sometimes you can get to the place where if you're not careful, you just don't make a decision, right? That's a kind of that's a form of being overwhelmed. Like, I don't know what to do because like this could be good and this could be good. Both of them could be bad. My boss says sometimes you just have to back it out of the parking lot, or you have to back it out of the driveway, or you're never going to go anywhere. Sometimes that's what we do. We get stuck. We get overwhelmed. And the psalmist here says that from the end of the earth will I cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. What did he say in verse 1? Hear my cry, O God, and attend unto my prayer. The first thing he asked for was for the Lord to hear him when he cries out to him. And then he says, even if I'm at the ends of the earth, even if I've been driven as far away as I can possibly go, when I'm overwhelmed, you're the one I'm going to cry out to. I will cry out to you and you alone. It's after saying those things that he utters the phrase, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. I'm way down here. Man, I'm at the ends of the earth. I'm overwhelmed. I want to be up there in safety and protection, anchored and grounded in the one that is higher than I, stronger than me. The picture here is one again of great safety. Wants to be to the rock that is higher than I. Oftentimes, as you read the Psalms, the word rock is used as a descriptor of God, of Jehovah. He's our rock, right? You think about the way the Psalms often talks about, he's our shield, he's our buckler, he's our mighty tower, he's our strong tower, he's a rock. Make no mistake, the picture here being given to us is that he is crying out for God's deliverance. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Verse 3, for thou hast been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. Even when I'm at the ends of the earth, I'm going to cry to you when I'm overwhelmed. And my prayer is that you're going to lift me up on a solid rock, because you have always been my shelter. You have been my strong tower from the enemy. You have proven yourself faithful to your promises, God. And I trust you, and I believe you. And I know that you will be my shelter, and I know that you will be my strong tower against my enemies. I think that goes a long way in saying, well, how is it that David can say that even when I'm at the ends of the earth and I get overwhelmed, it's going to be you I cry out to? Because David knew that there was no one else that could be that shelter to him. There was no one else that could deliver him and put him in a strong tower of protection from his enemies. Think about some of the things that Brother Philip went over in David's life. Think about, as we've read these other Psalms, some of the things that David went through. And remember, we've been able to go talk about this horrible, rough thing he went through, and yet how God delivered him, and then go point to the psalm that he wrote after he went through that. Now, there's a lot of debate when you read Psalm 61, oddly enough, about when did David write it? Did he write it when he had to leave the country and he was living with the Philistines, which to him would have felt like the ends of the earth because he couldn't be by Jerusalem? Or was it when he had to flee from Jerusalem because of his own son Absalom? and how he had to leave everything behind on the spur of the moment? Or was it some event where he was off fighting the Assyrians, or fighting this group, or fighting that group, or we don't know. We aren't really told. Now, you're going to get lots of opinions about it, but we aren't told. But we are told is David's going to cry to God. David can openly declare in faith and trust that next time he's overwhelmed, he knows what he's going to do. I'm going to cry to you next time I'm overwhelmed. I don't care if I'm at the ends of the earth. You will be the one that I cry out to. And I know that you are faithful, and you have shielded me in the past, and you have been my strong tower in the past, and I know this. And I will keep right on crying out to you. He says, I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Now, there's some people that talk about this, and they say that, well, this must be the time when David was told he couldn't build the temple because he talks about the tabernacle. I personally think that's a pretty weak argument to try to base this on a specific time. I think you're trying too hard at that point. Remember, the word tabernacle means tent, right? The last half of this talks about that he was going to be trusting in the covert of thy wings. The idea here in this verse, whether it's talking about the actual worship place, the tabernacle, or whether it's just talking about the protecting tent of the Lord, or whether it's talking about the future temple, what you can't lose sight of is what he's saying is that he wants to be under the protection of God. I want to be under the protection. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Now, he does use the word forever. So I think there probably is a little bit more to it than just the idea of being under the protecting tent, so to speak, of God. Listen, you and me, we're saved. We got a lot of stuff to go through in this life. Where we want to be is drawn up close to the Lord. Where we want to be is under the protecting hedge of Him. I am thankful to know that when this life ends, my eternity is going to be dwelling with Him forever. That's an amazing promise. Because no matter what I face with in this life, there's coming a time when all that sorrow and all that grief and all those things are going to be gone, and we will dwell with the Lord forever. He uses the word abide. It's that idea of dwelling. I mean, I am going to stay under the tabernacle of God forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Now that's an interesting way of saying that. You've actually probably heard it said other ways, in Psalms even. The word covert there really just means cover. The cover of thy wings. So you can think about probably other passages that you've heard, right? And you get that picture of being sheltered up under the wings. Brother Wayne always talked about that chicken that would fluff its feathers up, right? And the little chicks could run under it and it'd protect it from the bird of prey that was flying around, right? That's the idea here of, Lord, I trust in the covering of your wings. Remember, he's saying this, talking about a time when he is far from home and overwhelmed and crying out to God. It's in those moments where he says, I trust in your covering wings. I trust you, Lord, and I trust your protection. Nothing's getting under there. Nothing is going to be able to take me out from underneath your protecting covering wings. He says in verse 5, "For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. Thou wilt prolong the king's life, and his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." Now there's verses 5, 6, 7, and 8. There's a lot of discussion when you read different people's thoughts on this. Is David still talking about himself? Has David switched gears and he's talking about the Messiah? There's a lot of different things that go back and forth here. I sometimes think that we can miss the obvious by trying to read too much into it. But at the same time, hey, listen, the Psalms are full of references to the Messiah. And there's some times where I think both are 100% applicable. In this case, I have a hard time separating some of what's being said from David and the promises that have been given to him. Which is interesting when you think about the promises that have been given to him, part of that actually does go back to the Messiah and some things that are there, right? Because David was given a promise that it would be his seed that rules and reigns forever. So I think actually as you read the last half of this verse, I think there is aspects of this that are 100% about David as the king and his recognition of the vows that he has made before God, the protection that God's going to give, and the promises that God has already given him, and that God is going to bless his kingdom. When you think about those promises that he's been given, some of what he says also applies to his seed, which would be the Messiah. And he truly will reign forever and ever. And there will truly be a day when under his rulership, under his kingdom, there is no enemy, and there is no sorrow, and there is no grief. And it is 100% protection from all of those evils. That's an amazing time to think about, really. So what does he say in verse 5? "For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name." I think if you imagine yourself being David, king of Israel, hey, he had been given a promise that he would be the king. So whether or not he wrote this while he was running from Saul, listen, he already had the promise then that he would be king. Now, I happen to think it was probably written later in his life. That's my own personal opinion. But let's say he was already king. David had already made his vows for what he was going to do, both to his worship of God and the way he would rule the kingdom. And he said, "Lord, you've heard my vows. You've heard my vows. And you have given me the heritage of those that fear thy name." I think he as king understood the importance of the Lord having placed in his hands the heritage of his people. Right? You can take it from the physical perspective of that. That in and of itself, by the way, had to be a little overwhelming. I mean, how would you like to be the one that leads the chosen people of God? You got to make some really good decisions. You got to head them in the right paths. You got to protect them. Man, I don't know about you, but to me that'd be a little overwhelming. He says, "Thou wilt prolong the king's life, and his years as many generations, and he shall abide before God forever." I personally don't doubt that David was thinking about those promises that had been given to him, and how that God had said that your son will rule in your place. But not only that, yes, there were promises that Solomon would rule. But those promises to God went so far beyond Solomon. Those promises even went beyond Solomon's kids and grandkids and great-grandkids and beyond. Those promises actually involved the day when Jesus would come, and not only come and die for our sins, but the time when Jesus comes back and truly rules and reigns on the throne of David. And David could say those things. Lord, I know you will be our protection. Lord, I know what you've promised. Lord, I know that you will be with us. And he shall abide before God forever. Now, David knew that God was going to bless him, and David knew that God was going to, he was going to be king, and that he would rule and reign. He had those promises from God. But isn't it also amazing to think about the one that would come? The one that would come in Matthew and the other Gospels tell us that Jesus has the lineage that goes back to who? David. And we know that although he came humbly this time, there is coming a time when he's going to come back, and he's going to come back as king. It says in the last half of verse 7, "O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So will I sing unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." This is part of the reason why I think that David is not just talking about the Messiah in these few verses, because he actually says, "Thou hast heard my vows, thou hast given me the heritage." And in verse 8, he says, "So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." He is still talking about what he started in verse 5. And he says, "Lord, because of your promises, because of what you've done, because of your proof of who you are and the things you've done, Lord, I will praise you forever." While I do what? Daily perform my vows. You know what? As you go about your life, hey, look, we can see that goalpost that's way down on the end, and we can see all the trouble that's here in between it. And we may even have faith and trust that God is going to carry us through that. But as we go, let's be doing every day, day by day, those things that we're supposed to be doing. Those vows that we've made, those things that we've committed to God, those things that we've committed to others. We want to daily fulfill our vows. We're not just going to sit back on our hind end and say, yeah, the goalpost is up there. God's going to get us there. But the psalmist says, I'm going to praise you. And while I'm praising you, day in and day out, you are going to see me working to fulfill my vows. Daily. Man, every day when I get up, is going to be another day for me to fulfill my vows to the God and to the people. Listen, how great would it be? How great would it be to have a ruler of the nation that said, daily, I am going to praise God. Daily, I'm going to worship Him. And daily, I'm going to get up at the beginning of every day and I'm going to say, today is another day to fulfill my vows before God. That's the heart of the ruler that the nation of Israel had. He wanted to serve God every day. He wanted to do with the people that God had given him. He wanted to do with them and for them the things that God had asked him to do and the things that he had vowed he would do. That's a pretty powerful leader. I'd love to have a leader like that, right? Unfortunately, too many times in politics today, whatever country you're in, half the words coming out of their mouth are just simply to get you to do what, they'll tell you whatever they want to. They'll tell you whatever they got to tell you just to get you to vote for them, just to get you to support them. And then 4 years later, when they decide they need something else, they'll change what they say to get more people to vote for them. But David said, I'm going to praise you every day, and daily I'm going to fulfill my vows before you. You know what I see when I read this passage in its entirety? I see someone that trusted God. He trusted God. He knew where to go. Hear me, hear my cry, O God, attend to my prayer. 1, he went to God with prayer. He trusted God would do something about his prayer. Lord, even though I'm at the end of the earth, and even though I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to cry to you because I know that you will hear me, and I know that your shelter is there for me, and that you are my strong tower. And you know what? I want to abide with you forever. I want to abide in your tabernacle forever. You know what? And I want to, and I am going to trust in the power and protection of your wings, your covering, your covering. Not what this nation can do for me, not what this ruler can do for me, not what this president, not what this king, not what this constitution, not with this, not with this. I am going to trust in your covering. And I am going to live my life based on the promises that you have given, knowing that you have a king that will rule and reign forever. And because of that, I'm going to praise you, and every day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to try to perform my vows that I've made. This is a psalm of trust. Trust. Do you know who to cry to? Do you cry to them? And do you trust them? You know, sometimes I think we're really good, and we'll close with this statement. Sometimes I think we do know who to cry to. And sometimes we're even really good at crying out to him. But we're not always very good at trusting that he's going to do it. Isn't that kind of strange? But it's the truth sometimes, if we're honest. Yes, we need to pray to God. Yes, the thing to do when I'm in trouble is to pray to God. But then we don't always live and act and react like we trust that he is going to do it. The heart in this is, even when you're overwhelmed, go to him and trust him. And in trusting him, you will be able to praise him and to move forward and to do the things that need to be done, even though you were coming from a place of being overwhelmed. Did you notice that? Overwhelmed is that point where you just don't even know what to do. And yet by the end of the chapter, what does he say? That I may daily perform my vows. He trusted, and he's able to perform, even though he was just at a place of being overwhelmed. All right, we'll be done. I appreciate you guys' time and patience and attention.